you confident the acting Auditor General, who I read is investigating the project, both the procurement and the tender process, are you confident that the Auditor General will get to the bottom of this?
Very General has exposed the way this government runs its procurement. It's exposed the way that it has a poor lack of attention to detail. It's spoken about cost blowouts right across the spectrum. I've got every faith that they will put the blowtorch on this, and I think the government will come unstuck as a result.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, obviously, if they hadn't spent $200 million plus on Wellcamp, major challenges in the Queensland health system could have been addressed. Just on this second quarantine facility at Pinkenbar near Brisbane Airport, is that another white elephant?
Alan, it was a decision taken by the government to build it. Now, there is no doubt whatsoever that it comes at a big price tag. The difference between this and Wellcamp is it is owned by taxpayers. So if they want to use it as a flood shelter, for emergency accommodation for people who are doing it tough, for domestic violence victims, it's actually owned by the government and it can be used by the government.
As opposed to...
It's hard to criticise something when you're talking about future-proofing when you own it. But when you say something's future-proofing and it's a short-term lease, that's neither future-proof nor ministerially idiot-proof. It's neither.
That's it. It goes back to the private sector. Look, just on money, I note that this senior Education Department bureaucrat who was suspended following a corruption probe which led to the former Deputy Premier Jackie Trad quitting was paid more than $630,000 whilst stood aside, and the new Education Department boss has said he didn't read the Crime and Corruption Commission report into the fiasco, but the head of the Crime and Corruption Commission at the time said it was essential reading for all public servants. So this Deputy Director General, Jeff Hunt, resigned in mid-July, more than 2 years after an investigation into the botched appointment of a principal at the new Inner City South State Secondary College, which was in Jackie Trad's former electorate of South Brisbane. The Deputy Director General Hunt was ultimately found to have engaged in misconduct over the appointment. He was suspended, but since suspension has received $630,000. David Crisafulli, this misconduct business seems to be very rewarding.
Yeah, they say crime doesn't pay, but misconduct does, apparently. It's a fairly reasonable gig to sit at home and watch TV and be paid pretty handsomely. But in all seriousness, Alan, why has this occurred? You can't blame the individual. Blame the system. Blame the government. They knew for 2 years that this bloke was being paid because we were asking questions throughout. We asked questions at estimates. But they cannot make a decision. They are ministerial accountability. And do you know who pays? You pay. The taxpayer, you pay.
Well, if the Director General of the Department of Education hasn't read the report and you were to become Premier, would you sack this bloke?
If a Director General on a handsome sum of money doesn't feel it's appropriate to read a report like that, well, that person that can never set the tone that you need in an organisation. So what good leadership is a ministerial accountability. And I'll put it back on the minister for a second, Alan, because don't get me wrong, there's no excuse for the DG not having read it. But I wonder how many times the minister said, okay, this is an important report. I want you to brief me on what your views are. I've read it, section. What do you think would be holding the DG to account? But we've got ministers in this state who believe that their role is to jump on Twitter all day and spread vitriol. No, your job is to administer.